From the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's TAN Talk.
Welcome, everybody, to Picture This. We're here tonight to talk about photography. We're in Clearwater on 1340, Dade City, 1350, Zephyrhills, 1400, and in Little Rock, Arkansas on 880. The phone number in Pinellas County is 727-441-3000. Toll free is 866-826-1340. And you can get us email by picturethis.questions@gmail.com. Welcome.
Hey, Lou. How are you?
I'm great.
Good to see you this evening.
Absolutely. What have you got for us in photography this week?
Oh, we've got some fun things to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking about common mistakes that photographers make and maybe some possible remedies or helpful hints on how to avoid them. And so we're going to be looking at those tonight. I've got my segment on This Week in History, which is a topic that's probably going to interest a lot of the people in greater Tampa Bay because it has to deal with Cuba and the revolution and some things that way. And what happened, actually, I think it was 53 years ago this week. So we'll be looking at those things. I understand you were out this weekend taking pictures. Where did you go?
Well, I went up to Orlando to Disney.
Yeah.
Friday was the start of Disney's Flower Power, kind of a spring, throughout the spring, several months, every week, some old rock and roll band is free at Epcot Center.
Some old rock and roll band. I thought all the rock and roll bands were old.
No, you're probably right.
Yeah, probably so.
But that's always fun, and it's an opportunity to try shooting something different.
Yeah.
Interesting who you get to see, and this week they had a guy by the name of Mickey Dolenz, who was formerly of the Monkees.
Yeah, I do seem to recall the TV show.
Yeah.
I think I was in about 3rd or 4th grade at that time.
You probably fit the audience.
Yeah, probably so.
But and that's a lot of fun, and it's possible to do that with a point and shoot. It's not a big venue; you can get close if you want, and it's a nice challenge.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Moving on, let's talk a little bit about This Week in Photography. Since we're kind of in the Wayback Machine, you took us back to the Monkees, and they were probably big, and I would say probably 66, 67 was their TV show, something like that. Well, just a few years before that. There was this thing that happened in Cuba. Fidel Castro had a revolution there, and there was a photographer by the name of what is commonly known as Alberto Korda, K-O-R-D-A. I left links for that on our Facebook page, so if you want to kind of follow along, head to www.facebook.com/picturethisradioshow. But Alberto Korda was born in the late 1920s, and he effectively became Fidel Castro's personal photographer.
Wow.
And he documented a lot of the revolution as it happened, not really as a photojournalist, but more almost as a friend and someone who was very sympathetic to the revolution. So a lot of his images are considered these iconic revolutionary images. And it was this week, March 5th in 1960, so 53 years ago, he took a photo of another revolutionary called Che Guevara. And that picture went on to become, one of the most iconic, most famous pictures of the 20th century. If you search Che Guevara, you just search Alberto Korda, and do it through Google, click on the images link. The first photo that'll probably pop up is Che Guevara's. And it symbolized the revolutions going on at that time throughout Central and South America. And that happened 53 years ago this week, that image. Was shot on a Leica M2, an old rangefinder, and shot obviously in black and white. and with just a little 90-millimeter lens. And one of the quotes from Alberto Corda that I really like is, he says, "Forget the camera, forget the lens, forget all of that. With any $4 camera, you can capture the best picture." And those are really true words. And we'll find out tonight, because we're going to talk about things that photographers do wrong, and maybe little things to go over that. If you want to email us a question, you can email us at picturethis.questions, and that's plural. We got some people trying to email us last week that left the S off, so it's picturethis.questions@gmail.com. We've got a couple questions from last week we will try to get to. And so one of these has to do with shooting in RAW or JPEG or RAW light, RAW medium, some of these different things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that really are based on what I expect to do with those photos and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Sure.
To me, if I'm just shooting snapshots and things like that, there's probably nothing horrible about using the JPEGs. But better cameras that give the option to shoot RAW plus a JPEG, yeah. If the JPEG's good and I simply just want to make a print or let it live on my computer or email it, it works fine.
Yeah.
But if I've got problems with that image and I think it's important to me and I want to be able to work with it more and improve it more, then I've got the RAW image to fall back on.
Good advice. Yeah. The only thing I don't really go along with, you've seen some of the manufacturers start, RAW file was always, it was the data right off the chip.
Yeah.
And for some people, that was a big file compared to JPEG. We were looking at that in a workshop I taught the other day, just Saturday, Photoshop Elements workshop. And I pulled up a RAW file. It was 25, 26, 27 megs, and the JPEG was about a third that size.
Yeah. And that's a big JPEG for a lot of cameras.
Yeah. That's off an 18-megapixel camera. And but these medium RAW files, small RAW files, it's a real compromise. And I think you're really better off just shooting, the large RAW, the full RAW, or just go with the JPEG and be done with it. We had one more question we didn't get to, and this is specifically oriented to Nikon shooters. Kyle writes, he says, "Is there a foundation book that you can recommend for Nikon DSLR users, for novice to intermediate users?" And my advice there is there's a number of good books, DVDs, videos. You can go to YouTube, lynda.com, Lynda. They're one of the supporters of the Florida Center for Creative Photography. And they do specific tutorials on specific cameras. And so, there's some basic fundamental photography taught, but you really get to know your camera much more in depth than what the manufacturer provides in the instruction manual. It's usually easier to read. It's not a translation from Japanese. There's a guy named Jeff Ravel that writes some great books. There's another guy, David Birch, I think his name is. And you can find them on Amazon or in a local bookstore. Yeah,
there's usually various camera books that are specifically on that model that you probably are interested in. The other thing that I always felt about owner's manuals is they're a great tool for how to find things and how to make your camera do certain things.
Oh, sure.
But what they don't do is tell you why you would want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, owner's manual, as I always say, they lose a little something in translation. And the videos that you can find on YouTube or the specific books written about them will get you a lot more in depth if you want to go there, or present it in a much cleaner, simpler verbiage that's easier for the common person to understand. A couple things going on. I mentioned this week the Florida Center for Creative Photography, and of course that's the group that makes all this possible. Their website is www.flccp.org, and they've got a couple of exciting things coming up. One is starting in April, the first Monday, well, actually all 4 Mondays in April, they'll be teaching a new online photography course, and it's 1 hour each Monday night for 4 nights. So it's 4 hours of instruction, beginning photography. It's available online. If you can't make your time period, then all of the online material is being recorded, and you'll be able to either watch it online or download it. And the cost for this, all 4 hours, is only $17 total. And so it's a great buy if you know someone or you're looking to take a beginning photography course, and you just can't make the time to do all day Saturday or an all day Sunday, but you got an hour a night on a Monday night for 4 weeks, or sometime during that week, and there's going to be some little bit of homework, some shooting assignments, and some things. So be sure and check that out on their website. And there's plenty of time to get involved on starting the beginning of April.
And that is on the website, and they can sign up there?
Yep, sure is.
Absolutely.
They can get signed up. So
great thing to do.
Yep, great way to get started in photography. So, I've made a few mistakes taking pictures from time to time. I posted a good one on Facebook today on the Picture This Facebook page, and it's almost embarrassing to admit it, but here it is. I'm leading these photo walks, as we call them, field trips, all over the greater Tampa Bay area. So one night we go over to downtown Tampa, and we're going to shoot at dusk and sunset and all this stuff. So I've got all this gear in my car, tripods, all this stuff, and I'm going to show all these folks how to do it. The one essential thing I left at home would have been nice if I had a camera to show people how actually to do this stuff. So I've actually left my camera at home before. So it happens.
Yeah.
And so some remedies that I've found. One of the things that leading all these photo walks that we do, common things that I see are like forgetting to charge the battery. Mm-hmm. And my advice there is always buy more than one battery. You're out of batteries, you're just done taking pictures. These aren't old mechanical gear, springs, levers. If you don't have a battery powered up, you're done. You're over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I like the 2 battery grips.
Yeah.
They give you a lot of power to go out with.
Yep.
That's certainly one thing, and I've done the same kind of thing. You might remember one night we were out together, and I forgot my memory card.
Yeah, that'll happen. I've done that too. I've done a couple of those things. One, I'm doing the right thing. I'm going, okay, I'm going to charge my battery up before I go, and I'm sure many of the listeners have done this. So you got it on the charger, and you're scrambling to get out of there, and there you are. You're halfway there, and you go, oh, my God, I left the battery on the charger. So what I do now, I leave my car keys by my battery, so I can't drive off without pulling the battery out of the charger. Same thing could be said for memory cards.
Yep.
You put your card in, you try to clean it off so you got a fresh card to go shoot with. Set your car keys by it. Do something that you really can't leave home without, and that'll hopefully prompt you. And you'll move on from there. Now I know you've got some ideas too on common mistakes photographers make. Those are just a couple of mine.
Yeah. Well, just to start off with, one of the things that is very simple for people is they don't use the flash outdoors.
Oh, sure.
It is something that when you're taking pictures of people or have dark foregrounds, anything like that, even if it's the little built-in flash, you don't have to put a big flash on. Just push the button, let the flash pop up, and it'll fill in and, even the dynamic range out and have a brighter image that is sharper and more detailed on the subject and foreground.
Oh, yeah. That's one of the things I talk to members in the group about all the time, but photographers in general, is if you're taking people pictures, a flash almost never hurts. It'll almost always improve your pictures. And particularly, I mean, we're in Florida, but people are listening to us all over via the, the stream on their computers and such. But, here in Florida, and like tonight, I'm often wearing a baseball cap, and, it's to keep the top of my head from getting sunburnt. And you'll be there in a year or two. And so people take my pictures, and my face is almost always in shadow. And the way to be able to see somebody's eyes, you just got to turn the flash on. And it's a no-brainer. And people need to make more use of that. Even with little point-and-shoots, the big digital SLRs, turn your flash on. It's going to help.
Big time.
Yeah.
I think another common mistake that people make is they're thinking that better means more expensive equipment.
Oh, sure.
And that means that they're going to take better photographs, and it's really more about the photographer than the camera. And we just talked about that with the quote.
Yeah. Corda's quote that with any $4 camera you can capture the best picture is really true. Is really true. And one of the things that strikes me as funny, the night that I forgot my camera. So here I am. I'm walking around and talking to people about photography and just trying to, hand out some helpful tips. And one of the things I rarely go home or leave home without is my cell phone. And sure enough, I had my cell phone that night. And somebody said, "Why aren't you taking pictures with your cell phone?" And it was kind of like a aha moment, Homer Simpson, duh. So I did. I got out my iPhone and I started, taking a few snaps. Not as versatile maybe as my big camera, but I did get some cool pictures of the members, doing things before it got dark. I don't have a tripod, but they even make tripods for these cell phones now.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's brackets that they can go on.
Yeah. Best camera's the one you got with you.
There you go. One of the other mistakes that I think is often an issue for people is too many posed snapshots with the subject in the center.
Oh, yeah.
That recording of "we were here."
Yeah. And I have some early childhood memories of our father doing that, posing us in Washington, D.C., and I can remember as a little kid, I was the youngest, and it was like, is Dad ever going to take this picture so we can get on to doing something? And, I don't know all the magic he was doing with the dials, but whatever it was, it didn't work.
No.
So, now that I know a little bit more about photography, I can't even imagine what he was doing with that camera. So, oh well, yeah. Those posed pictures, the candids are usually more effective and this kind of thing, and make for more memorable images rather than just, as we used to say in the camera store business, you just line them up and shoot them down.
Yeah, well, and taking pictures of people doing things,
sure,
laughing,
sure,
having a conversation, gives more impact about what was actually going on at that time rather than just let's all line up and take a record that we were there.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other things, and you kind of said it, in that analysis, one of the most common mistakes that beginners make that I find is they get too much stuff in their pictures.
Yep.
And one of the most famous quotes of the 20th century that I like was a guy named Robert Capa, and he was a photojournalist during the Spanish Civil War, World War II, in Indochina after World War II in the early 50s. But he had a quote that was, "If you don't like your photo, you weren't close enough." And that's one of the great ways to get stuff out of your picture. The problem is we don't get close enough to our subject, and I think that's what he was always trying to say.
Well, and that's, distracting backgrounds that really you need to look around in your viewfinder and see everything that's in there and move closer or change the focal length to a longer focal length, which will make the background smaller.
Sure.
There's lots of different ways, and moving closer is certainly one of them.
Sure.
That you can change that background and keep it from being so distracting and make the subject the subject.
Yeah, make them more prominent.
There's another way that'll help with that too, and that's a common mistake, is shooting everything horizontal.
Oh, sure.
I am a big believer in turn that camera 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Fill the frame with the subject. You can try it yourself. You know, have someone stand in front of you, take a picture of them horizontal, and then turn it 90 degrees, fill the frame, and look at the difference in the size of the subject and how much less background that there is.
Oh, yeah. And it's so funny about shooting verticals. Some people's brains just don't connect that way. Various times I've shot when I've taught beginning photography classes that are multi-part, where I give homework assignments and that, you know, and we'll be a week or two into the class, and I'll notice that this student, everything they've turned in is horizontal. So as I'm giving out assignments that week, I'll go, okay, your assignment, you can take nothing but verticals. That's it. That's your assignment. You have to make it a vertical. And I think people need to go back and look at their pictures and go, wow, you know, maybe I do, you know, shoot everything horizontal, and give themselves a personal assignment to start shooting verticals. Maybe not every picture, but, you know, they need to start, you know, putting that into their conscious and going, you know what, I'm going to shoot these pictures two ways. I'll shoot it as a horizontal, and I'll also make a conscious effort to shoot that vertical. Good advice. We had somebody text me this message. These are people that must know me, so I don't even give out my phone number, and I'm getting text messages. You know, it is okay to call the show, folks. The number is locally 727-441-3000. Toll free, it's 866-826-1340. But this one got texted into me about people pictures, and they're, without reading the whole thing, they're saying one of their problems is they often take pictures and they don't notice what's in the background. They'll see it later, and there's a tree coming out of somebody's head.
Oh, sure.
And what I've found works for that, and I've seen some really funny ones. You know, as a lot of people know, I was in management for Ritz Camera for some years, and we used to see the people's prints come out. And I would often have you know, one of the employees come over and go, "Oh, you got to see some of these pictures." And you look at some vacation pictures, and you just bust up laughing. You know, and they've got jet airplanes flying into their heads, trees coming out, fountains spouting out of them. I mean, all these ridiculous-looking things, and they never, ever saw them. And the trick that I've found that breaks that, you know, is to force, before you take the picture, force your eye to look at each of the corners, the upper left, upper right, lower left. And when you take your concentration off of that person or that subject, all of a sudden you see all of the stuff that's in your background, and you go, ugh. And then I guess I do have to zoom in, get closer. Or one of the ones that I challenge people with is change your perspective.
Yep, change your perspective.
Move the camera. Shoot high, shoot low.
Yep, absolutely. Just step a few steps one way or the other, and even change the angle makes a big difference.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't have to be you're just square facing that subject.
Absolutely. So, you know, don't be afraid to move around and get that better angle, better shot. In the film era, it used to cost us a small fortune because you'd shoot more and more pictures, which meant more and more processing, more and more this and that. But today, just remember to take an extra card with you, take an extra battery, which goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the hour.
Yeah, and I think one of the things about cluttered images like that I think can be of some help, when you're not taking pictures necessarily of a person, but you're taking pictures that might be scenery, it might be a cityscape, whatever, you can take a wider angle, overall view, but take multiple images and zoom in on some, more wide angle, change your perspective, things like that, and you're liable to find after you looked at that scene and took 5 or 6 images, the first one wasn't the best one.
Mm-hmm.
It's after you worked it a little bit.
Absolutely. Some of the other, those are kind of, we've talked about some of the beginning mistakes, and some of the, I don't really call these, don't want to say mistakes, but common errors are things that, as people, we've got some members that are professionals and have transitioned from part-time professional to full-time, or transitioned from advanced amateur to part-time professional, shooting weddings, shooting portraits, shooting models, things like that. One of the things that I've found that a lot of them don't like to do, and I think because they're afraid of doing it badly, is working with the software. They avoid Photoshop, they avoid Lightroom, they avoid Elements, and they find an assistant, or they hire somebody, or they pawn it off on their wife or their kid, and I think the photographer will improve their photography if they get more involved in the editing of it. We've got members that just don't edit. They're afraid to touch a computer, but it's not going to bite. But I think they're afraid that they're going to break it. Some of the people. But take a class, take a workshop, read a book, watch some YouTubes. I mean, there's free things that you can do to get involved with the editing process that aren't going to cost you anything, and you can start improving your pictures. But people are just afraid to do that.
Well, I think that's true, and I think there's some carryover on the part of some people that somehow there's something wrong with using Photoshop, that it's fake or phony, and you shouldn't be doing that. And I'm the other way around. Great photographers worked in the dark room and improved their images, and Photoshop and computers just gave us the power that we didn't used to have if we didn't have a dark room, things like that now we can. Yep. And we can really make a big difference.
Yep. There was a quote that Ansel Adams had. It was something to the effect of God invented the dark room because he didn't design the range of light right. So people had to be able to fix that.
Sure.
Compensate.
Sure.
And most of the great masters were great darkroom people in that era, but even in this era, the best photographers are involved in their own editing. It's a complete process, and if you give up part of it, you're really giving up a huge part of it. For me, the enjoyment, and I think that's some people's attitudes about editing, but you're giving up artistic control of your work, and for some people it'll be more satisfying, more rewarding if they get involved in the processing of their images.
Oh, absolutely. I could not conceive of handing off an image and saying to somebody, you fix this for me in Photoshop.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Well, and that brings up something else for someone more advanced, is not noticing the light.
Yeah.
Concentrating so much on that scene or that subject that they don't notice where the light's coming from, what's backlit, or what that dynamic range is, and then not dealing with it as a photographer.
Sure. And, I agree with that 100%. And, people need, the very definition of photography, if you go back to the Greek, it's painting with light is what photography means. And so light is the fundamental component that's required. You go back to the camera obscura and these various things. It's all about light and reproducing the real world, taking a three-dimensional object or person and translating it to a two-dimensional medium, your print, your computer screen, what have you. And light plays 99% of that photograph. Without it, there's nothing. Yeah. And we just fail to see the shadows, the contrast, the ranges of brightness that are going to make an exciting and rewarding photograph. And I think the answer is, one, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is look at great photographs. Yeah. If you're not out shooting, then the next best thing that you can do to improve your photography is look at great photographs.
Absolutely. And in keeping with what we were saying, use that light as a tool to make that image have more impact by recognizing the light and using it instead of just taking an overall exposure and then going, wow, that didn't really look too good to me.
Yeah. And with digital, you've got the possibility of shooting it different ways. Doesn't cost anything. Experiment, be creative, try different things, and see what you like. But talking about light, one of the things that I also see that a lot of beginners to intermediates make mistakes with is this concept of white balance. And all of the digital cameras today, they've got an auto white balance feature, and it gets into an easy rut to sometimes leave it there. And of course, if you're shooting raw, the white balance really is irrelevant because you can fix it in or adjust it, if you want to look at it that way, in your software or whatever you want. But JPEGs, it's much more critical, and people need to sometimes play with that a little bit, but that brings about one of the really fundamental common errors or mistakes that I see photographers making. They will forget that they've adjusted their white balance.
Yep.
And they'll be shooting something indoors and they set it to fluorescent or the tungsten, which is like your 100-watt GE, and it'll, like the tungsten setting, makes your pictures profoundly blue when you go outside. And I've had to work with photographers that forgot that they had changed their white balance and took dozens or hundreds of pictures even.
And if they're JPEGs, they're done.
Yeah, I mean, there's no magic in Photoshop. It does what it does, but it's not going to fix everything. All right, I think we're ready for a break here in a minute. But the other thing is I think people rely, a beginning mistake is not experimenting with black and white. So I think after the break, let's talk about black and white photography for a minute.
Sounds great.
Cool.
You may be owed some money. After 911 and 411, call 541. That's 727-541-1741. Call Gulfstream Motorsports for a diminished value report. Due to my 28 years experience in the auto salvage business, I'm very good with wrecks. So if your car's been involved in a wreck, call me for a diminished value report. Call 727-541-1741. You may be owed some money for the lost value of your repaired vehicle. And visit us at GulfstreamMotorsports.com.
This is Chris Tinney.
And this is Tasha.
And we'd like to invite you to join us on Spread Peace Radio. Every week we bring you stories and information that will warm your heart and feed your soul. Tune in every Wednesday at 6 p.m. to learn about people making a real difference in the world. Join the conversation and help prove there's a place for positive, uplifting conversation on talk radio. Don't forget to visit our Facebook page and learn how you can direct a cash donation to your favorite charity at facebook.com/Day of Kindness.
And get inspired once a week by subscribing to our newsletter at www.spreadpeace.org.
The patriotic insurrection is well underway and now live on the air. Tune in to the Liberty Underground Radio Show with Alex Snitker and Adrian Wiley every Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Tan Talk AM 1340 and AM 1350 Tampa Bay, along with KLRG 880 AM in Little Rock, Arkansas. Liberty Underground is your source for the liberty movement and unbiased and unfiltered news, information, and activism. Listen to Liberty Underground on the 1787 Radio Network.
From the Sunshine State, this is Tampa Bay's Tan Talk.
And we're back. Picture this, Lou Donald, and I'm Jeff Donald. Ted's taken a couple of nights, a couple of weeks off, and Wade, who is one of the friends of the show, I just want to point that out, he's got a photography exhibit going on locally. Anyone that knows Wade Sutherland or anyone that has an interest in photography, Wade has a photo exhibit at the Palm Harbor Public Library. That's on Nebraska off of US 19. So if you got a chance, check out Wade's photo exhibit this week. If you've got a question for Lou or I, it's 727-441-3000 in Pinellas County, Hillsborough County. Toll free, you can reach us at 866-826-1340. If you're shy, you don't want to talk to me on the phone, I can understand that. Shoot me an email. Our email address is picturethis.questions, plural, S on the end, @gmail.com. So before we took that break, I brought up the topic of challenging yourself, making a mistake that you shoot everything in color. What do you think of black and white, Lou? We were talking a little bit about that while you were eating dinner at Naughty Nancy's.
Well, I happen to like black and white a lot. You know, it's a new kind of a challenge. You really have to learn to see in black and white.
True.
But a lot of images, because they're actually in a way more abstract, because there is no color in black and white, and we can be...
Can I quote you on that? There is no color on black and white. Let me write that one down. I like that.
Well, we get distracted by color.
Sure, we do.
You know, our eyes get distracted, and we concentrate on things that, you know, just because of the bright colors may be distracting to that particular image. But learning to see in black and white can make much more powerful images because you don't have the distraction of color.
And that's very true. And this is something that a lot of people lose a perspective on, is that I talk to younger photographers today, and there's this disconnect with black and white photography in many cases. And they don't realize that until pretty much well into the 60s, color was not considered an art form.
Right.
There were no color photography exhibits in the United States. You couldn't go to the Museum of Modern Art or any of the big museums that supported photography in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. They were all black and white photographs, no exception. Black and white was art. Color is what you did on your family vacation. It was snapshots. And a guy by the name of William Eggleston came along, who's still alive today, in the 50s and into the early 60s, and he got the curator of photography at the Museum of Modern Art, a guy named John Sarkowski, and went way out on the limb, and they did the first color photography exhibit in the United States, and certainly the first major color photography exhibit in the world, and that brought color into prominence. Now, it's, you know, in just basically 50 short years, it's become the reverse. It's everybody shoots color, but to me, color becomes a crutch. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of pictures that have poor composition, poor choice of subject, a number of things, but the use of, they're just lucky. There's some bright colors, some colors that are maybe opposite on the color wheel, so you have some contrast going on in the picture. And so compositionally, creatively, it's a mediocre picture, but it's got some colors in the right case, or the right places, right situation, and it draws the viewer in a little bit, but the picture really can't stand on its own. Black and white's a challenge. It's hard to do really great. Takes a lot of time, but it really makes you concentrate more on the subject and the composition. You don't have that crutch of color to fall back on. And people should give themselves black and white assignments. They really should.
Oh, absolutely. And, talking about that, I think the question should be asked, because most cameras can convert to black and white internally.
Sure.
Is that the best way to shoot your black and white?
Well, probably not the best way to shoot it, but for some people, the other way to do it is to shoot everything in color, turn it black and white in software.
Yeah.
But if you're not a big fan of the software, I understand. Set your camera to monochrome, black and white, and play around with it a little. You can still take those JPEGs in and play around with them.
Oh, yeah.
In Photoshop Elements or Corel Picture This or whatever they call it. Not Picture This. Paint Shop Pro.
Paint Shop Pro. Well, the software does give, in the conversion process, some ability to add some looks.
Yeah.
Which is nice that it'll just do it for you automatically.
Well, and that's a key thing, because I think a lot of people, the reason they don't like their black and white is the pictures turn out too flat,
too gray,
not enough contrast, and they go, boy, Ansel Adams pictures or Edward Weston's or somebody's black and white pictures, they look phenomenal. and mine all look kind of muddy, bland, whatever. They don't realize that you've got to edit those things. But some of the cameras even go so far as to give you color filters, like what we used to use in the film era.
Yeah.
And so you can make your skies more dramatic, and you can have something white, and black, as we used to call it, in your photographs, and get some really interesting looking images playing with the black and white.
Well, one of the things that we kind of touched on a little bit as a response, but I think something that people could really use to make some more impactful images is that we tend to pick the camera up and shoot it at eye level when we're standing up.
Sure.
And getting on eye level with your subject, and we talked a little about that at dinner, is, if you're trying to shoot a little bunny rabbit somewhere, get down at that rabbit's eye level.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes it's getting up and shooting down.
Yeah, and I think that's especially good for people pictures.
Yep.
I see parents that are constantly, they just don't think to bend down and get to the child's eye level. You get a much more intimate kind of look rather than having the kid looking up and you're looking down from this dominating position. You get down to their level, so the camera's looking into their eye. You get a much more emotional picture, much more true-to-life image. And that's really great advice for any kind of portrait, I think, what you brought up is shoot at the level of the subject.
I spend a lot of time on the ground when I'm shooting my grandchildren.
Yep, I will bet. It's amazing you can get up off the ground to get to the show, but I'm sure the grandkids help you back up.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Back a little bit to the things that we have going on. One of the things that I'm a big fan that in a lot of my images, if people look at them, I'm always looking for leading lines.
Yep.
I always look at where the line is going to come out of my picture, lower left corner, lower right corner, where are these lines, and I compose images with strong what are known as leading lines. And those are what I call helpers sometimes. Leading lines are rarely the subject, but they help guide the eye to the subject. And I think if people took more, they started looking at good pictures and looking at where the diagonal lines, the strong geometry that can be in some pictures, it'll aid them in composition a little more. And the use of natural frames, which brings me to at the Florida Center for Creative Photography, we have these online assignments every week.
This week.
And the one that just ended, it ended today at noon, was frames.
Yep.
And I got a lot of emails this past week from the photographers that accepted the assignment saying what a challenge it was and how it stretched their creativity to be looking for images that
have a frame.
That had a frame around. And but one of the ones I really liked was I got a comment, and I'm not going to call out the photographer, but he said, I must be old school because what I did, I took a picture of a framed photograph that I had, and I thought, well, that's one way to do it. It may not be the only way, but hey, if you're taking pictures, you're participating, and that's what's important.
Absolutely.
So you run out of ideas yet?
No, not really.
No, I thought maybe
not
you were going
really.
to break into a song and dance.
No. One thing that is a little challenging, but it can give some powerful images, is there's, well, perhaps no such thing as too strong, but bad weather can give some phenomenal images.
Oh, yeah. And that's kind of what I've found is a cultural, societal kind of thing. I don't know if you know much about the Scott Kelby Worldwide Photo Walks.
Yeah, I know a little.
Yeah. Scott's a local guy.
Right.
He runs Kelby Media Group, which is over in Oldsmar, and I think Scott and his wife and family live in Safety Harbor, and wonderful guy, really, has a great blog, is really committed to education and things in photography, runs the National Association of Photoshop Professionals, and they've got a conference coming up soon. I think it's in Vegas. And I saw where one of his guys, the middle of March, is teaching I think it's a Photoshop workshop over in Tampa at the Convention Center. But in any event, Scott runs, every year, he runs this thing called the Worldwide Photo Walk. Mm-hmm. Proceeds from sales of the T-shirts and things like that go to benefit a orphanage in Kenya. But we used to do them here in Tampa, and it's what it is. It's a one-day event, and it is the largest single photography-related event in the world. And there are people in each city, sometimes multiple people, that take people on photo walks. And then he's got a contest, and sponsors like B&H and Adorama and some of these other places, Adobe, give out prizes. So it's kind of a really cool concept to get people involved in photography. And in any event, we used to do them here in the middle of summer. I mean, they were like July, then it was August, and it was miserably hot. We had to deal with rain and stuff, and rain-out days and all this stuff. And so literally a couple of times, photo walks just got rained out, gone. So consequently, Scott, this last year, moved on. I think the last 2 years, maybe, they've been in October. And I led a couple of them this last year. And it's a lot of fun, but October's nice weather typically in the greater Tampa Bay area. We had a great time. But what I noted is over in Europe, particularly northern parts of Europe, into Germany and some of those areas, it's different in October.
Sure.
No problem. Photo walk, pouring rain. They all showed up. They go out in the rain and shoot. Here, rains. Oh, my God, I can't get wet. I might melt. My camera might dissolve. And Americans, just as soon as the weather turns bad, boom, they're gone, and their camera is well protected. But major parts of the rest of the world, they go out in that stuff and shoot, and they get some amazing photographs. Shooting in rain is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. No such thing as bad weather. If you've got a little protection or you've got a weatherproof camera, go out and shoot. Put a raincoat on.
Yeah, and more so now than ever. In the old film era, Olympus, that was their big claim to fame. They didn't call them waterproof. They called them weatherproof. And that was a unique distinction. But now you got Pentax and a lot of companies making these weatherproof/waterproof now cameras that are great for snorkeling. We live here in the Bay. The water surrounds us, and a lot of people take their gear kayaking and stuff. And I was pointing out to somebody Friday at a workshop, I said, just take your camera, one of these waterproof cameras, stick it under the water while you're in a kayak and snap the picture. And they were like, you can do that? And I said, well, it's a waterproof camera, isn't it? Well, yeah, but I just, do it. Have some fun. Take it into your swimming pool. Practice with it, and you'll get some really creative shots.
Absolutely. And, this brings up something, we kind of talked about it. One of the biggest mistakes people can make, you go out and you buy your new camera and you're interested in photography, one of the biggest mistakes is not taking some kind of class.
Education helps. There's no doubt about it. But there's a different mindset today among people. I've been very active over the last 10, 12 years on some of the big photography forums, and I don't participate much anymore, but dpreview.com, fredmiranda.com, a couple of other ones. At times I've been very active on them, but the general tone today, which I really find interesting, is novices or intermediates that are thinking of maybe turning professional, they will turn to a forum for advice, and they go, what should I do? Should I go to college? Should I take some courses in this? And it always cracks me up. The advice on these forums is no, you can get a better education on this forum than you could ever get going to college. It's a waste of money or going to this school. And I don't believe that per se, but certain fields of photography will benefit from having a degree, but there's no licensing procedure. If you want to be a wedding photographer, it's not like being a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer or some other professional or even a plumber or electrician. The state requires you to get a license. Anybody with a digital camera can be a photographer, and you can see it any day on Craigslist. Look for the people that'll shoot a wedding for $100, $200, whatever. But it's a far, far stretch from being a professional just because you have an ad and are willing to shoot somebody's wedding for $200. And I've seen more disasters that way than and I just feel sorry for those brides and their families and people like that because, and they don't all end in disaster, but spending a little more money for what hopefully, presumably, is a once-in-a-lifetime event, you should get better pictures than what these folks can do.
Well, and that's not to be hard on them. Everybody has to start somewhere.
Sure.
But there are courses, there's various things that people can find, whether it's on YouTube or something else, on wedding photography and learn.
Right.
And even if it's as simple as what equipment should you have.
Right.
There's got to be a learning curve somewhere there rather than just, I've got my Rebel and it's time to go. Yeah.
And there's a couple of good organizations that can point people in the right direction as well. The PPFA, Professional Photographers of America.
Yep.
They have courses. A lot of them have online courses. And that's not really the Florida Center for Creative Photography's role. We're not really training people to be professionals, but there are organizations. I know USF, University of South Florida, has a certificate program that you can go through. It's there's so many classes you have to take, things like that, and you're working with, in most cases, their regular college instructors and getting a great foundation. And it's diversified. They make you take some studio classes. They make you take some different things, so that should you decide that wedding photography, portrait photography, whatever it is you decide to do, you've got a foundation in them. If you're just trying to take better pictures for your website, eBay, whatever, they can certainly teach you that as well. But then so can we. So there's lots of options that way. Just got an email in. This is from Sue, and she said, "Good show, guys. Lots of great tips." And she's talking about a couple of things that she's forgotten to do from time to time. One is, which is one of the real basics, and I'm always fighting this, is going out on a photo walk, and you remembered to bring your card, but you forgot to clean them all off. So it's like, you went out with your film, but guess what? You shot it all. Yeah. You've got to get into kind of a workflow. When you get home from shooting, getting those images off the card needs to be a priority. And I've talked to people, and I've even had folks go, "You mean I can take them off before the card's full?" And it's like, yeah, you can take your pictures off anytime you want. And that was a revelation to them, that they didn't have to wait till it was full. I guess they were thinking more of film. And
like film
like
where, if you don't shoot it all, it's wasted.
And the other thing that she talks about, a mistake that she's made, is which is one that I occasionally made, but I really have a methodology of getting out of it, is, but I still from time to time make the mistake. I've been out at times teaching like a nighttime workshop. And we teach, how to do it at low ISOs on a tripod, and you get 10-second, 20-second exposures. And then I'll talk to them about increasing your ISO. So, I end up, put my camera away, go home, go to bed. Next morning, I've got a photo walk, and my camera is set to ISO 3200 or 6400. And I'll be taking a picture, and things are blinking at me in the viewfinder, and it's like, boy, why is that happening? I look at my picture, and it's like pure white.
Yeah.
So I missed maybe that great shot. So I have a little checklist that I run through is I pull my camera out of the car, or out of my bag before I go walking, and I just look at some of the settings. I look at what exposure mode I'm in, which for me is usually aperture priority to start out. I look at my ISO, and the other thing that I need to check is my exposure compensation, because I do a lot of nature things. A lot of times I'm underexposing a stop or two, or I'm overexposing a stop or two. Black bird against sky, white bird against the sky, and so I'm making frequent changes there. So when I get out of the car, or I'm getting ready to get my gear out of the car, I check my ISO, I check my exposure compensation, and I check what mode I'm in to make sure I'm in aperture priority, and then I'm pretty well good to go. All right?
Yeah, and that's usually pretty much on the screen of most cameras, or certainly if you turn that on a simpler camera.
Oh, yeah. But a lot of times we overlook that in the excitement of the moment.
Yep.
We show up someplace and it's new and we're excited to be taking pictures, and we forget the basics. And if we're not aware of the settings and looking in our viewfinder, I mean, I've had people go half a photo walk, an hour, and they're going, same thing with white balance, if they played with that, but they'll go, you know what, I just realized all my pictures are overexposed. I had my exposure compensation +1.
Yep.
Sorry about your luck. But that can be an issue. And we've got time for probably maybe one more little question, and then we'll wrap up tonight. But you know what? Something I'll throw. Well, I'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the most basic, I think, compositional, and we've touched on some equipment issues, some compositional things tonight, is getting the subject out of the center. Back even in the film era, we used to call it bullseye shooting, because in the middle of your viewfinder was like a little target. It was a circle or a cross or split image if it was a rangefinder type thing. And so it acted just like a target in a gun or at the range. And so, you put your subject on that target and click. And you ended up with these, what today I call static images. They're not dynamic images. The viewer's eyes go right to the subject and they don't take anything else in the picture. And it's kind of it's kind of boring. The eye doesn't move through the picture and see things. And so I encourage people to use what's called the rule of thirds. Turn on their grid lines, which are in most modern digital SLRs. They're in a lot of the point and shoots, and it gives you and what a grid is. Or the rule of thirds. It's like a tic-tac-toe screen. It's got little lines etched, look like at thirds that look like a tic-tac-toe or a tic-tac-toe, grid, and try to put the subject's eyes in the upper third, or
at the intersections.
At the intersections of those lines, absolutely. And and I've had students go, "Oh, that seems so unnatural." And so what I encourage them to do is try it both ways. It doesn't cost you anything in the digital era. Try a picture with the subject in the center, and then try another one with the subject off center. And that's some good advice from all of us for all of the photographers out there.
Yep.
We've got a show coming up next week. We've got some things to talk about. But one of the things, what I found interesting is we've been getting emails, and I've been getting comments from members of the group and everything that they go, boy, that hour goes by so fast. They really want us to do a second hour, so we'll see. Well, people need to call in, email in. They need to do something. I'm not sure if it's not just you and I sitting in this room. Well, there's Cedric. Hi, Cedric. Yeah, he's waving. But let's have some participation. And speaking of that, this Wednesday I'll probably be seeing you. Is that right?
Absolutely.
And we're going to be where?
We're going to be at O'Keefe's.
Yep.
9 to 11.
Yep.
Coffee and photography.
We do that every Wednesday. If you've never been to one, it's absolutely free. Come out to O'Keefe's Restaurant, the corner of Jeffords and Fort Harrison in Clearwater. Come late, leave early, whatever fits your schedule, and have a great time. Bring your questions. We usually have a little presentation. We show some photos, and it's an educational opportunity for everybody to learn a little bit, and you get some great coffee at O'Keefe's. So I know I'll be seeing you there, and probably another 20 or 30 of our members. So for Lou and I, I'm going to sign off tonight, but we appreciate you listening in and hope that you will tune in next week while we bring you Picture This, or join us on a photo walk. Have a great night, folks. Take care.
Good night.
Picture This is made possible by the Florida Center for Creative Photography. Jeff Donald, Director. Visit us online at www.flccp.org. Our executive producer is Ted Froberg. Our directors are Jeff Donald and Lou Donald. Our tech consultant and content analyst is Wade Sutherland. Our engineer is Cedric Harris. If you like our show, you can like us on Facebook as well. Visit www.facebook.com/Picture This Radio Show, all one word. Send your comments and questions to picturethis.questions@gmail.com. For Jeff and Lou, I'm Ted Froberg saying thanks for listening. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week. Good night, everyone.